Hi everyone, Michelle here from michellesmidheaven.com, and today I'll be spending time with one of the big astrology moments of the year as Uranus is rolling into Gemini on July 7th. Let's first take a look at the discovery chart. This is a chart cast for the exact time and location when Uranus was discovered, and we can think of it like the planet's birth chart. As soon as something becomes visible to us, we can cast a chart for it, whether it's a person, an event, a planet, or even a dream or vision. The symbolism of the horoscope will correspond to the nature of what's really going on. Uranus was officially discovered, so became visible to the world on March 13th, 1781 in England. And here's the chart for that moment. We see that Scorpio was rising on the eastern horizon, acting as an omen or a unique signature that is revealing everything about Uranus's character. In the first house, or the ascendant, we've got the moon, Jupiter, and the south node. The moon stands out in a big way. She's practically shouting for attention here, so close to the degree of the ascendant. And she's also what we call a fallen moon. And that's adding an extra layer of drama and unpredictability. The moon always represents the winds of fortune, so to speak, the general circumstances or the twists and turns of fate. And when she's fallen, as is the case here, we're talking about a more dramatic turn of events. The South Node's presence adds to this energy of sudden change and reversal of fortune, which perfectly captures Uranus's reputation for shaking things up, right? And by the way, I am offering a workshop on the lunar nodes, so you can check that out at michellesmidheaven.com. Now, the sign of Scorpio here in the discovery chart describes that all or nothing survival mode feeling. So Uranian energy is not just a mental thing. It is, in fact, driven by deep instinctive forces that are concerned with control, power, and empowerment. And definitely the mental energy was present as well, because you see that Uranus itself happened to be in Gemini, which is an air sign, and the air element brings intellect into the mix. But it's good to keep in mind also that everything is powered by this intense, instinctive, deeply piercing scorpionic undercurrent. Jupiter is really interesting too, because at the time Jupiter was just stationing to turn retrograde. From our point of view on Earth, we would have seen Jupiter pausing in the sky, standing still before moving backward. That is a very powerful omen. Jupiter stands for unity, order, coherent systems, and also meaning. And traditionally, Jupiter was associated with religion, big institutions, and law and order. So this shift indicates a big reversal as Jupiter is about to make a U-turn, flipping his law and order maybe into chaos. Now, Jupiter is in Mars's home sign, and Mars is in Jupiter's home sign. So you could say that they're swapping houses. This is what we call a mutual reception, and it means that Jupiter and Mars are working together like a well-greased machine, helping one another to fulfill one another's goals. Jupiter's goal is to establish something that is more meaningful, a better system, so to speak, based on his opinions and ideas about the way things should be. And Mars's goal, on the other hand, is to remove all obstacles and take assertive and even sometimes aggressive action. Working together like this in a mutual reception, Mars and Jupiter form a powerful combination as catalysts that tear down whatever is in the way of a new idea or ideology. Mars is key here as the ruler of the first house, and we can see Mars hanging out here with Saturn in Sagittarius. Saturn is, of course, all about resistance and rejection, and Mars is the one who wants to break through and solve problems because he hates stagnation, and so he's going to push through no matter what and assert himself. Saturn is a god of opposition, and there's even an opposition here between Mars and Uranus. So you get this feeling of pushing and pulling, breaking out of old patterns, and flat out rejecting the present circumstances, while at the same time refusing to stay stuck. So this is all textbook Uranus, isn't it? Now, from another angle, Mars is sitting in the second house, which is about self-sufficiency, the ability to support yourself and protect what's yours. There's an I can do this myself vibe going on here. Mars and Saturn could also be saying, I'm taking responsibility, even if it means I have to fight for it. Very often it's about anger that is aroused by something perceived as an offense or as an injustice. I should stress that they are also capable of demolishing the structures or frameworks that are beneficial. The typical Uranian keyword, revolution, simply means that the conversion from one thing to another is happening. That's definitely something that we're going to keep in mind here. Now look at what the sun is doing in the chart. The sun has just squared Mars and is moving toward a square to Uranus. Squares in astrology are action-packed because they're of the nature of Mars. So squares have the ability to set events in motion. And in that dynamic, in that motion, as the sun is actually triggering the Mars-Uranus opposition, the sun brings vision and clarity, like a sudden aha moment. Solar knowledge is always about direct knowing, so not just analysis or reflection or following a teaching. The sun sees. So we have an immediate understanding thanks to the sun, who then gives us a sense of direction, a sense of purpose. And since the luminaries, the sun and the moon, are seeing one another through a trine aspect, there is something about this entire process that is very quick and easy. It flows naturally, or it happens quite impulsively, is another way of looking at it. So the sun's clear, immediate insight is also strongly embedded in the chart through the sun's close connection with Mars, the chart ruler. If we look at the elements, something else jumps out. Everything except Uranus, or all the traditional planets, are located in water and fire signs. There's no earth in the chart. We know that the earth element is what keeps things grounded and stable, so the lack of it here really highlights Uranus's wild, destabilizing impact. Water and fire together bring up the big feelings and a great amount of creative power as well. But without the earth element to stabilize it, it's mostly about movement and change. And it's going to be harder to anchor the changes that are being made into something that is a little more long-lasting or robust. And if we think about it, this is in fact what happens with revolutions, right? There's a revolutionary stage, the big turnaround, but the end result, in hindsight, is usually not exactly what the revolutionaries intended. So when we put it all together, the Uranus discovery chart practically screams upheaval. It's a recipe for breaking the mold, rapid change, surprise, and also a kind of magical electric creativity that doesn't care for how things stand right now. Things need replacing. There's got to be change, even though we have no idea where to go next. We'll figure it out, but we need to have a breakthrough first. That's the true Uranian spirit. To know where we're headed, it's always good to know where we're coming from. So let's briefly take a look at Uranus's journey through Taurus. As I explained in a previous video, a planet always impacts the ruler of the sign it's in. So while moving through Taurus, Uranus influenced Venus or Venusian themes like social interactions, relationships, sexuality, all forms of entertainment, like fashion, the arts. In other words, the pleasant things life has to offer. Now, since Uranus's ingress in Taurus in May 2018, a lot has happened, right? Some of the trends that emerged in the last 7 years that are blatant examples of Uranus and Venus's sign are, for example, the sex recession, or more precisely, the plummeting of partnered sex. Also, rejection of shame around body hair was a trend. So different ideas that emerged around the definition of Venusian beauty, but also an emphasis on sexual autonomy with the idea of explicit consent. and at the same time, an anti-monogamy trend, one that seems to be centered around communication, actually. And remember, Uranus was in Gemini in the discovery chart. So Uranus always brings an element of communication, language, and technology wherever it is. Think pronouns and transgenderism, as well as the revolving to a different gender through surgery, and the censorship, propaganda, and online wars about these topics. So I hope you can see how those are all very blatant expressions of the restless Uranus-Venus dynamic that went on. And when we think of Venus's association with art, some other things come to mind, such as the incredible surge of AI-generated images, music, and it becomes so accurate these days that it's getting harder and harder to distinguish between fake and real images. And we're basically experiencing the theft of human creativity. In essence, Uranus in astrology is much more like Prometheus, and Prometheus is a titan that stole the fire from the Olympian gods, right? Similarly, we now have a machine or a technology stealing from humans, very Uranian. And of course, there's Hollywood and the music industry that have suffered a blow as we're hearing about all sorts of scandals that are marking the end of an era of that particular avenue of glamour-coded sexuality. We can also think of the Taurian earth element themes, as there were a couple of recycling myths exposed because it was finally admitted, for example, that solar panels and wind turbines cannot be recycled and they end up in landfills. Making batteries for electric vehicles is incredibly damaging, so reports of that started surfacing as well in the past years. So those are just a couple of examples. But now let's take a look at what kind of themes are likely to come up with Uranus in Gemini. Uranus moving into Gemini means that Uranus is awakening Gemini's ruler Mercury in a major way. Being born or discovered while in the sign of Gemini, Uranus shares a lot of qualities with Mercury, especially its mental quickness and the connection to technology. The word technology comes from the ancient Greek techne, which means craft, skill, art, or practice making or doing something skillfully. That's a pretty accurate description of Mercury. Mercury isn't just busy mentally, his body is always busy because he's always moving. He's the messenger of the gods. Whether he's running, playing an instrument, writing, speaking, exchanging ideas, debating, playing games, playing the devil's advocate as well, trading, or learning something new, Mercury is far from relaxed, and consequently, Gemini is not the most peaceful place. So I think around Uranus's ingress into Gemini on July 7th, you'll feel that both your mind and body will start buzzing. Uranus will send an electric jolt through Gemini's nervous system. There may be a feeling in the air that something is about to flip, a reversal of fortune, or at the very least, a change in tempo. Looking back at the discovery chart of Uranus, those themes that I discussed earlier will all be activated as Uranus is bringing all of that into Gemini. Remember the scorpionic all or nothing energy? Well, that's now going to be brought into the mental mercurial realm that is about to become more destabilized. We're talking about changes on a cognitive level that are influenced by impulsivity and raw instinct. The existing mercurial order, or how we organize our thoughts, how we transmit and exchange information, the ways in which we relate to our devices and to AI, and the impact that has on the human mind, all of that could become more disruptive, or alternatively, this relatively recent wave of information technology itself may be disrupted or completely reorganized. So we might ask, what kinds of mercurial obstacles do we want to break free from? Are we feeling some rejection towards some aspects of the digital world we're living in right now? What responsibilities are we willing to fight for? This is where the Mars-Saturn conjunction in Uranus's discovery chart comes to mind. There's our anger, our indignation, and defiance. Information and knowledge don't come gradually for Uranus, right? Remember, the sun in the discovery chart was activating the Mars-Uranus opposition, indicating that solar flash of immediate knowing. We know that brain chips are already being implanted to connect the human brain to computers. So maybe that'll become more commercially available during Uranus's upcoming journey. In the same way that Uranus and Taurus brought radical shifts around sexuality, gender, and bodily identity, think of the gender-affirming surgeries, right? It's not outlandish now to think that Uranus and Gemini may bring radical shifts around mind identity. Planting a chip into your brain is like mind-affirming surgery, right? In mundane astrology, Mercury and Gemini symbolize transportation, logistics, commerce, economics, inventions, technology, especially, of course, the digital and communication-based technologies. Those are obvious dominant forces in our world today. Gemini is an air sign, which makes me think of air travel, cellular and Wi-Fi frequencies, things that are being sprayed or transmitted through the air. And I think one of the major issues will be weather modification technology, and that this will become more overtly. And more specifically, I'm talking about technology to block the sun, exactly like in the discovery chart, where we see the god of darkness, Saturn, in a dominant square to the sun. This is called a decimating square. In other words, Saturn is destroying the sun. The dark is destroying the light. So, as you can imagine, on an esoteric, symbolic level, we see the darkest and most frightening of all evils. I mean, as an astrologer, I pay attention to symbolism and imagery. That's how the cosmos speaks to us. And the symbolism of blocking the sun's life-giving light, not only the light that feeds all plants, trees, and creatures in our place in the cosmos, but esoterically, the sun's light represents spirit and gnosis, the source or the one. So blocking the sun is certainly a blatant example of the blind use of Mercurial, Uranian, and Saturnian gifts without any spiritual wisdom. And if this continues, I can only think of it having an impact on our consciousness and soul, as matter and spirit are continuously influencing one another. Now, I want to stress that Uranus is not the one bringing the crisis. Uranus is simply highlighting the unsustainability of the status quo, and this transit will be offering a window to respond. Will people follow the trends in technology, or will people revolt against the digitalization of life? It's likely we're going to see both, right? But where's the real Uranian revolution then? Well, I've been thinking of telepathy, for example. There's already been a little preview of this with the telepathy tapes everyone was talking about a couple of months ago. So I'm wondering if that'll start unfolding a little further, and maybe remote viewing. It's still considered fringe, but will it become more prominent? Shared dream space between lucid dreamers and so on. Uranus and Gemini is inviting people to experiment with alternative ways to communicate. I think there's a lot we can discover about ourselves in that area, so maybe we'll see people experimenting, practicing new skills using nonverbal or non-local communication. This ties into another aspect, Mercury's natural contrariety to Jupiter. Mercurial experimentation can cause a sudden shift in worldview so that we don't keep on shrinking our consciousness and awareness and instead expand it. In the context of the sextile aspect that Uranus will be making to Neptune in Aries, we are treading in a liminal space where the boundaries between the individual mind and the collective mind are fuzzy. But is this territory going to be an individual experience on your own terms? Or are we talking about hive mind technology turning us into the Borg? And is AI becoming a religion? It looks like it is. And I've written about that on my Substack page if you want to check that out. Uranus instigates a counter-revolution as well. And just like Uranus and Taurus sparked a return to the land for some people. For example, off-grid living and homesteading. Uranus and Gemini might give rise to a movement that finds it increasingly desirable and sexier to go offline. Keep in mind that Uranus has the power to break habits and addictions, so that's crucial here. The rejection of technology can be an act of personal sovereignty, which could be very Uranian. We could see people breaking free from smartphone addiction or from their gaming addiction. Uranus is trine to Pluto is reminding us of how we're giving away our power. What are the things, actions, habits that have power over us? Or who has power over us, and how to step into our personal empowerment? Uranus wants freedom from external control. In Taurus, that control had to do with societal norms around the body, appearance, and gender. In Gemini, it will be about mental norms and technological entrapment. Gemini's ruler Mercury is the god of play, games, and curiosity, always ready for new information and content. And today, many people are trapped in addictive loops around those very things. Uranus and Gemini can act like a shock to the system, allowing people to suddenly stop and exit their mental prisons and daily compulsions. It can happen very quickly in a flash of insight or a flash of disgust. The stars speak differently to each of us, so if you're called to have a more personal dialogue with them, I offer consultations. Just contact me through my website, michellesmidheaven.com. And if you like my content, why not join one of my classes? I have a new 2-part workshop coming up in August on the lunar nodes, eclipses, and the Saros cycle. And you can sign up for that at michellesmidheaven.com. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time.